the benefits of using purchase orders and subcontracts with presenter Aline Cross. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Everyone will be in listen-only mode, so if you have questions, please type them into the questions box on the screen, and we will address them at the end of the session. If you need to step away, please do not put your phone on hold. If you have hold music, it will play for the attendees. This webinar will be recorded, and we will email a copy out to everyone within a few days. I will now turn it over to you, Aline.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, The Benefits of Using Purchase Orders and Subcontracts for Sage 100. The agenda today, we're going to cover some basics on why we use the purchase orders and subcontracts. We'll show you a little bit about the parts list, and then we'll go over how to complete the purchase orders, the subcontracts, and how they tie into your accounts payable. To get started, why do we need them? Why do we use them? Internal control is very important. It helps you control how your money is spent. You specify what terms, the conditions, the scope of work. Once this document is signed by both parties, it becomes a legal document. It also helps you track your job costs and your commitments so you know where your budget is at all times. And you can also identify errors before they become an issue. The purchase orders can be created very easily from your request and proposal screen, which is your 611.1 screen. You just go right at the bottom, you can create your purchase order. Your service receivables, if you do have that module, again, you can create them very easily. When you hit your options, you can create your purchase order right on the screen. From change orders, again, you have the button at the bottom, or at your options, you can create your purchase order based on what you've put in here. You can also create your subcontract or modify your subcontract right from your change order screen. And if you have the estimating, you can, from your takeoff screen, you can export directly into purchase orders by job, phase, change order, or task, and you can export to subcontracts also by job and phase. From there, you import into accounts payable. As soon as you enter the purchase order or the subcontract number, your accounts payable screen fills with the information. Parts lists, not everyone likes to use them, but they can come in very handy. You can create your very own parts list, customize it, or sometimes your vendors are helpful. They want you to use their parts, so they're going to send you their list in Excel. You can load that very easily into Sage 100 through the 9.6 window. You do not have to keep inventory to keep a parts list. The purchase orders are a document that you create that tells your vendor and your supplier what you want to purchase for material, how much you're paying for it, where you want it delivered, how you want it delivered by their truck, you're picking it up, and you can also control what dates you receive the material. The purchase order screen is 661. When you first go in, you want to check your options at the top of the page that show you warnings and auto close. You can determine if it's going to be a regular or a master PO. A master PO helps you to stage deliveries on a large purchase. You'll fill in the top of the screen with the standard information and the grid using your description, or you can access your parts list from that grid. And this is your purchase order screen, what it looks like. We will look at that a little more in detail. Subcontracts is a document that you create outlining the scope of work. And this can be very important because you want to detail the scope, how you want the work to play out, the cost of the job, your schedule, and your terms. Again, we go to the 671 window at this time. You check your options to set your warnings. You fill in the top screen, and then the grid using a description. and the window. They look very similar, but there are some differences that we'll go through. So at this time, I'm going to show you how to create the purchase orders and the subcontract. From your stage menu, if you keep it on your projects menu, excuse me, they may be right on your main screen, or you can access them from your list on the side. So we'll go to the purchase order first. When you open your purchase order, this is your options button I was talking about. You can set over budget warnings, and this is very helpful to be able to track some of those early alarms that might prevent some accidents. You can set a warning, you can set no message, or not allow it. You can set different tolerance levels. Sometimes you want to give a little bit of leeway there for tax or delivery, or you can set no tolerance. Another option is to automatically close. Once all the material has been received against a purchase order, you can have it close automatically so that when it's entered again on the accounts payable side, it will flag that it's closed. And you can also have it open your job schedule when you change the scheduled date here. So we're going to create a purchase order. Number 10, this will automatically default to the next number in line if you have your system set up to default to the next number. It pre-fills with today's date. And we're going to go to our vendor list. And we have our vendors are set up very well to show us what we're looking for in particular. So today we're going to use a concrete supplier, and we'll go over to our list and grab the concrete supply company. Now, as soon as I did that, my description filled in. And this came from this vendor's record. And it also told me what type of purchase order I'm going to create, which also comes from the record. And that's a list that you can create. I can identify a person that I want to have this go to, or I can leave that blank. And here I can grab my job. So we'll work on the school today. Now the next thing I do on mine is in my description, I like to put a little more information so that I can identify from my lookup list what I'm getting. It's only a little bit of space, but it does help you a lot looking up parts, or looking up your documents. So we're at the Wood Elementary School. We don't have phases on this job, but if you did, you would be able to phase your purchase order the same as all your other expenses and budget information. You can pull in a piece of equipment you may use on here. We're not going to use equipment, and that would be if you had the equipment module and you track your equipment. This task list comes from your project scheduling, and there's different items you can pull in on your schedule. My tax district came in when I pulled in my job because it knows where I'm taxing. Your approved date is the date you receive this approved. And one thing that I suggest is when you receive a signed document back, you can go right on our little paper clip here, scan it, and attach that document so that you have your signed copy attached and you know where to find it at all times. The scheduled date is the date you are scheduling this delivery, and the delivery date you can come back and actually put in the date you received it. These are really good to keep track of your material. The VIA is a little list. You can create this yourself, how you want it, their truck, maybe you have it UPS delivered, and then your terms. Now over here we have the status, and I spoke about a master PO. You can create a master PO, and that would be for a larger job. Maybe you have a large quantity of material and you want to release it a little at a time. You would create a master purchase order. The ordered by is going to fill in from your employee list. It brings you to a drop down. You can just grab the employee and fill it in. And this address is the job site address on your job record. If it's not going to be delivered to your job, you may want to change this address. Sometimes you have it delivered to your office. You want to make sure to put that because that will print on your document. Now the parts list that I spoke of, if we go out to our parts list, we can just grab some concrete pull it in. We're going to get the 5-stack concrete purchase. That's our part number. It fills in, gives us our unit of measure, which we can override, and it gives us our price. So maybe it's not that price that day. You can override it on the document itself. So I'm going to go ahead and order 5 cubic yards. But to date, once you've received some invoices against it, it's going to track what you've received to date. You can always come in and see where you stand on this purchase order if it's not billed all at once or delivered all at once. The current column goes back to your master. Once you create a master purchase order, you'll come into that master and you'll order your quantities by filling in the current. And what that does is creates a new purchase order for just that amount. Your canceled is if you reduce the amount you want, you change your mind later. It keeps a track of where you are. The cost code and the material, again, because we keep good vendor records here, these fill from our vendor. So the purchasing department doesn't have to think about the cost code, the cost type, or the account number. They're all going to fill in once your vendor is created. And these are defaults. Again, you can override them. If this day he's not doing cast in place, we're doing some form work, we can change that based on the budget and what you know you're ordering this material for. It knows which general ledger account to go to. The inventory location is, again, if you're keeping inventory. If you're not, we can hide that. We don't want to show that inventory location, and you can save it that way. Our sub-account came in from our job. It knows that this job is in our California office. And then, as usual, we have user-defined fields where you can fill in information you might need that's not already showing. These notes are associated specifically with this line item, where these notes will show at the bottom of your document. You can print the purchase order with both the large notes or the small. The large notes, you might want to put a general scope. Maybe you want a little more information on your line item, so you can put a little more in your notes here to describe that concrete maybe a little bit more. So we're going to save this purchase order, and we'll come back to it in a little while. But right now we're going to go and create our subcontract. And it's pretty much the same thing, except we start here with our job. And we're going to pull the same job. We don't have phases again. And you see it's automatically numbered. But let's pull in a vendor. And again, we'll go to our list where we have a nice sort for concrete subcontractors. We're going to find a concrete subcontractor who will help us with that purchase we just made of material. We'll pick concrete company. Now, immediately I got flagged that his certificate of insurance is expired. And again, this comes from our vendor record. We can set up all the certificates. And it's good to know this because you don't want subcontractors on your job with expired insurance. It then becomes your insurance problem if something happens. Ours will stay expired because the data is a little old. So, now, again, I'm going to add my job at the beginning just to make my sort easier. Our cost division are based on what you set up in your cost codes. It can sort it by the division. And again, you're going to have your cost code fill in below, but you may want to sort just all your concrete subcontracts, and that gives you that ability. The date pre-fills again. And again, you get your approved date back when your subcontractor signs and returns your document. And again, you can attach the signed document. And it's a good idea because then you know where everything is. Your scheduled start and finish dates, you can have those print on your subcontract so that right up front everybody knows when you're going to start, when you're going to finish. You can also come back in and put an actual start and an actual finish. And this is good to know because if you're on a job where you're getting penalized for delays, you might want to know if it's somebody else's fault. And this is a good place to keep track of these dates. Your status will be usually current. You can have it out the same status as your job. If your job is under bid, your subcontract may be at bid. And again, this fills from your vendor record along with the description of work that he does. If there's a bond on the job, performance, or bid, you can track those amounts. And if you're holding retainage, you can put that here. The whole button we'll come back to. So my description fills from above. I may want to put a little more description or leave it. And again, my cost code and my cost type are filling in from my vendor record. This is original subcontract is the amount that we're paying. You notice that it jumps right over your changes in your subcontract because this is going to come from your change order document, and this will compute itself based on your original any changes. This invoice is also grayed out. It's going to track if you are invoiced partially. It's going to show that on the document and what's remaining. And again, we have our user-defined and notes if you want to enter additional information. So we're going to save this and come back to it. So now that I have it saved, if I have any invoices or changes on it, I can look at them right from here. We don't at this time. The summary window opens up and just shows us quickly where we are. But the one thing that I was talking about with the description, and the reason I like to use more description, and you'll see this in the accounts payable also. If I look up my current subcontracts and I just have a generic description, I don't know what that reference is. I can sort by job, and these are all the ones on the one job, or I can look it up by my vendor number. But sometimes you don't know these job numbers or vendor numbers, but you do usually know the name of your job. So if I put wood in there, I'm going to come right to my wood jobs, and I can pull that right back in. So that's why I like a little more description there. It helps. So that's the subcontract. From there, we're going to take a look at how they tie into the accounts payable. When we enter our invoice number, then we're going to enter the purchase or subcontract number, and you'll see how the information pulls right in and makes your accounting much simpler. There's also the check mark where you can go back and check that balance, and you can pay partially, and your cost will reduce the commitment on your commitment report. At the same time, it will show you how much you've spent to date. So let's go to the, we're going to go back to the page, and we're going to go to our accounts payable invoices 4-2 window. And from here, we'll just type in any invoice number. So we were working in purchase order number 10, so let's pull number 10 in. So now everything is here for me. I know what job it is. I know who my supplier is. I know what they're doing on the job. Not that I care in accounting what they're doing on the job. I just want to make sure I know how much the billing means, that it's correct. You have your invoice date, which you can put today's date. The default for the due date and discount date pulls from your vendor record again. The open status, it's either open or under review or it's disputed. We're going to leave it open, and it's part of the contract. Again, we always have our user defined, but we're not concerned with the accounting. We're concerned with how this purchase order pulled in. So here's my part number, my concrete. It automatically told me I ordered 5 cubic yards at this price, and this is what my bill should be. If it's not, I know right away that I want to hold this bill and not, question it. It also calculated my sales tax because it knew the district. You can override that if it's off a little bit. Sometimes it's a penny here, penny there. Now it's going to tell me I manually computed it, so it won't compute it in the future. It also tells me it's going to my material account and my sub-account. The location and serial number, again, have to do with inventory, so we're not concerned with those, and along with the alpha part number. Now what's nice here is if I go to save this, I'm in a different posting period, so that's okay. It's going to open my job cost window where I can recost this if I want to, or it's going to pre-fill what is in my purchase order. But because I know that this agrees, my invoice is exactly the same as my purchase order, I can immediately just job cost and save it, and I'm done with it. I don't have to go through looking up things and finding different information. Now, because I had the vendor make sure they put the purchase order on their documents, I didn't have to look it up. But if I did, this is another way where the lookup helps. Now, I have all my vendor number and the information from my purchase order. And if I don't know my purchase order number, again, I would come over to my description. Maybe they put what job it is or what it is. I can look it up again. Usually, you're going to have your documents, the purchase orders and subcontractors identify the job and their contract number on their invoice. One or the other should be there, and that helps you to look up the purchase order. So that's the purchase order. Now we're going to do the subcontract. And same thing, same window. We're going to put a number in, and here we're going to hit. As soon as I got my subcontract from the one we used, it flags me again. This guy hasn't sent in his insurance certificates yet, so what are we going to do? Well, from here, we can go right out to his subcontract, and we can place his invoice on hold. We can also add a little note here, and then anybody looking at his document is going to know that we're holding because we have no insurance. So, or you can override it. Again, everything fills in. Our job, what he's doing. Our invoice date we can put. The due date defaults from the vendor record again, and the discount date. It's open. So here we have, maybe he's only done half the job right now, or we're going to pay him half up front. We can change that. So we're only going to pay him 50% of his contract right now. So we're going to save that, and again, we can just automatically job cost it because we know all the information is correct. Now this is flagging me that I didn't have a budget for that, but I'm going to save it anyway because we just added that budget. And my transaction date is wrong. So now when I go back, I can look at this little check mark here, and it's going to give me that subcontract summary. So I have my contract amount, no changes, new contract, how much has he billed me to date, and he's billed me 50%. So I know right with that window. I can also go out and look at his subcontract, and it's going to show me those amounts here. So that's how you fill out the, that's how you tie your accounts payable with your subcontract and purchase order, and how it reduces the chance of errors. The next thing we're going to do is look at some of the reports that we can get from the purchase orders. We'll go on to our menu, and under 662, we have a list of purchase orders. There is a lot of purchase order reporting here, but we're just going to look at the first one. We can condition that report, and we just want to look at that one job. So we're just going to click right out to that job, and we'll do a print preview up on the screen. Now these are all the ones we've done. And they're sorted by this is our purchase order number. They're sorted by record number, the order that they were put in. But there's other reports and sorting methods. Right now, we can drill down and look at that. Now here's the one we just created. So it's very quick and easy to look at a standard list and then drill down from that list to see what you've got. And looking at any one of them, you can see if you've been billed to date or where each one stands. Subcontracts, we have a very similar report in the 673. And again, we have many choices. So we're going to condition it just to get our full job. And when we do the print preview, there's our list. And again, this is the last one we did, was subcontract number 924. We knew it was to Oliver. We can drill down and have a look at it, and we can see that we're 50% on that job, on that contract. And these are all printable reports, or you can just open it and drill down. You can save them on your desktop screen. And one last report we're going to look at real quick is under 6112 is our committed cost report. And this is going to show us our job, where we stand from our budget and changes to what we've spent to date, what we've committed to date, and what we have remaining. So we did some concrete work here. We have cost to date, and then we have a negative committed cost because we have a subcontract that doesn't equal what we've actually spent. And then we had our supplies that we purchased. And it's the wrong one, but that's the basic idea, is you can drill down and look and see what you've got in here and what cost codes you've used and where you are in each cost code. Sometimes you need to do a little adjustment to your budgets or find out why you're over or under budget, and you can look right into it and see right from this window. I'm going to drill down and take you, these are all my costs, and I know why, what I've spent and why. So in summary, your cost reports are going to be much more accurate because you're accounting for your committed costs in addition to the cost, what you've already spent. Your committed is kind of a placeholder for you. It makes your accounts payable entry much easier. There's not questions unless you're over budget or it's flagged that you're over budget. You can catch when you're overbilled. If you use the master purchase orders for larger projects, you can stage the deliveries, and you control that. You can also hold the subcontracts if there's an issue so that they don't get paid accidentally. Do you have any questions?
The first question is, can we create a blanket purchase order to cover things such as dumpsters, portable restrooms, etc.?
Yes, you can. But they would have to be to different vendors. When you create your purchase order, it's specific to that vendor. So if you wanted to issue it, you could do one, and probably I would create it to yourself. And then you could just list these items separately here with the cost codes, because you can have multiple cost codes. But your vendor would be, your vendor is purchase order specific. So if you wanted to have them, one for dumpsters, and track that vendor specifically, you would have to do each one individually. So there are two ways around that. By creating it to yourself, you would have a placeholder. Does that help?
Okay, so the next question is a PO question. If I have several invoices for the same PO, is that when I would want to set up a master PO? Would this allow the PO to remain open for each invoice I enter?
Yes, either that or when you create your purchase order, as you receive against it, you can receive partial quantities, and it will keep it open until you've received every item. So as long as your purchase order is filled out completely and accurately with every item you're expecting, you can receive multiple invoices against it.
Okay, the next question is, in subcontracts, can you set quantity, unit, and price?
No. If you need to do that on a subcontract, then you can, and some people do use their purchase orders for subcontracts. If you have to have that kind of detail, then you would use your purchase order.
Next question is, if you only pay a partial amount of the purchase order, how is that entered in accounts payable?
As you enter your accounts payable invoice, when you enter your purchase order, we would come down and just receive. You can either receive, this is not a good example because it has one quantity, but if you receive, if you had order 2 and you receive 1, or you would change your price. Usually you're going to have a multiple quantity here, and you will just put how many you received, and that will track what you received.
Okay, that was the last question. If anyone else has questions, please type it in. Is the tax district linked to the address on the purchase order or the job in case delivery is to an office? In case delivery is to an office in one state, New Jersey, and the job is in another, such as PA.
The tax is linked to the job record, but it can be overridden on the invoice.
Can you show how the taxes is job cost?
How the tax is job cost? It depends on where you put it on your let's see if I can find one that will. This is a blank one, so I'll have to help. Kind of hard to do quickly that way. It's going to depend on where if you've set up your taxes to job costs. I don't know that they will, but it's going to depend on what cost code you use. You can either set it up to go to your cost code, or you can set it up to go to a general ledger account. But it will cost with your material into your cost code line item.
Okay, the next question is, are purchase orders strictly for materials and subcontracts for subcontractors?
No. It's recommended to use them that way because what happens when you get to the change order, a purchase order, unless you've created a master purchase order, is going to be used one time. A subcontract, you're going to have change orders against it. So when we go into a change order, we create the change order. We can change our subcontract right on here. You pull up your vendor or the subcontract related to that and track the changes to that subcontract. Whereas with a purchase order, you're going to create a new purchase order with new material changes.
Okay, the next question is, can you review entering a purchase order from the job takeoff?
From the job takeoff, yeah. Close the windows, then we'll go to takeoff. So this is window 9.5. You pull your job in, and we have this broken out into bid items. So we'll go to our concrete, since we're favoring concrete today. We export purchase orders. You can do by job and phase, change order, and task. So we're just going to do by job. Now it's telling us you may not correctly. We recommend you update, but we're just going to go ahead and do it. Now here it asks if we want to include the subcontractors, and we're going to say no because we're just doing purchase orders. At this point, we can check on or off who we want to create them for, and we'll export them. And it tells me I'm exporting only selected items, and yes, I'm going to continue. So it's complete. So now when I go into my purchase orders, now we're going to go back to my takeoff window. We're still on the Wood Elementary School. I'll open the wrong screen here. We're going to open the purchase orders. And we should have a new list. Now, I have done 7 and 8. So here's our purchase orders that it created. And it shows us here the sources from our takeoff. It's filled in my job number, and I have one for each of those companies that were listed in my purchase order. And now from here, I can go up and I can issue this in one batch. It's going to send them as many as I pick for that batch to be sent out. Does that help?
Okay, the next one is how to enter a purchase order for items that are in a quantity of 1 by the vendor. Quantity 1 of a 25-pound cylinder, that's in parentheses, that has one item is a cylinder of 25 pounds refrigerant, and refrigerant is used by transferred, this is very confusing. I need to share this with you. I just made you organizer. Can you see the questions box?
Yeah. Thanks.